Ahead and record.
Okay, welcome Ulrich to the Biohacker Babes podcast. Welcome. How are
Thank you so
you?
much for having me here.
Such a pleasure to have you. We have been chatting for a very long time. We've been meaning to get you on the podcast for a very long time. And we've been long time fans of the Carol bike. I think we first experienced it at PaleoFX in 2019. Renee and I were just
Somewhere
chatting
around
about
there.
that. Does that sound right to you? Was that your first
Yeah.
PaleoFX?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Okay.
I remember that very well. I think your dad may have been one of our first customers, if I remember that
Oh,
correctly.
wow. Yeah, I think he bought it at that event, right? About five
Yes,
years
yes,
ago.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
That's
Shocker.
cool.
Absolute shocker.
He's always the first.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember my mom and dad trying the Carol bike at that event.
yeah,
That was
yeah,
a
very
big
cool.
hit in the family. We were talking about it for
Mhm.
forever and ever. So we're going to get into the science we're going to talk about what the Carol bike is. I think for any of our audience that's on Instagram, they've probably seen our less than 15-minute workouts on these bikes and they're wondering like, is that it? Is your workout going to be that short? But the answer is it's very efficient. And we're excited to have you as the expert to explain the science. But before we get into that, before we get into exactly what Carol Bike is, can you just share with us how can we possibly improve our cardiovascular fitness, our metabolic health, our sleep, our mood, our overall health with less than 20 minutes of cardio?
Yeah. So what the Carol bike does is it allows you to not just a very efficient, I would plainly say to perform the most efficient cardio workout. So the most efficient way to improve your VO2 max. And it you can achieve that by going for very, very brief periods. So 2 times 20 seconds, all out to hit your maximum intensity. So that's overall is very, very short. You have a short warm-up, then a first sprint, short recovery, second sprint, and a short cool down. Takes around 8 minutes. And if you're in a rush, you can do it really in 5 minutes. And you trade time with intensity. So you simulate like an emergency situation and really momentarily push to your limits. And that just creates a very powerful training stimulus. I'd argue the most powerful training stimulus, and hits the same kind of triggers as a much, much longer workout would do, but activates those adaptation pathways in literally in seconds, where a regular like jog or so would take 45 to 60 minutes. So it's momentarily pushing to your limits to just create that stimulus.
Yeah. It is pretty wild with the 20 seconds how like for me, I hit that 12-second mark and I'm like, whoa, man, like it's wild. It's a wild
Yeah.
experience. So I'm wondering, can you explain like how this would be different from maybe someone says, well, I have a rower or I have a regular exercise bike. Can I just do a 20-second sprint on there? But how is the technology different with the Carol
Yeah,
bike for those sprints?
sure, sure. So, um, I mean, we're building on research that was developed over decades, and we're working with the leading exercise scientists in this field. And before we had developed our bike, they did use different equipment. They're now working with our equipment, but there is kind of specialized lab equipment that, in fact, is operated by a second person that allows you to perform the same type of workout. It's called REHIT, Reduced Exertion High Intensity Interval Training. Um, and we created that. The problem with the lab equipment was it's first is much more expensive. It's like $10,000-$15,000. It's operated by a second person, and it's just not consumer friendly. And we've put the same experience, the same science into a consumer friendly package that makes it really as easy as possible to perform like a lab grade scientific workout at home. If you try to do that on a, say a normal exercise bike, and in fact, before we started, I did exactly that. you would find it incredibly difficult to find the right resistance, to apply it at the right time, and to apply it as rapidly as needed. So it would just be an inferior experience. You can try, you will see, and in fact, like we have on our website, like some demo videos where I try to demonstrate it on both types of equipments. And for us, the difference was stark enough to say, no, this needs like this specialized equipment that really makes it as simple as possible. And for us, it was just very clear. It's not the same as a very much inferior experience and just not optimal. And the Carol bike is built to make REHIT, to make this most efficient cardio workout optimal and as simple and as easy as possible. You could try on a rower or on a treadmill. I wouldn't do it for risk of injury. And again, kind of what's the right intensity and so on. If you have access to an air bike, might be a viable alternative. The problem with an air bike is just it's essentially a bike with one gear. So it's a fixed relationship between how fast you pedal and the power you generate. And so that may be perfect for a 30-year-old CrossFit athlete, but it would not be perfect for your dad. It would not be perfect for my mother, who's 81 and uses the bike every other day religiously. And with the AI we have and the electronic controls and the computer-controlled brake, we can really create a personalized and optimized workout for each and every individual, and thereby help, everybody, any age, any fitness level, to perform a very, very, very efficient, most efficient cardio workout in minimal time. So we make it easy. Maybe there's other, like the absolutely low cost alternative would be maybe something like hill sprints. Yeah, if you have a steep hill and you put your running shoes on and you just run as fast as you can for 20 seconds up a hill, that might actually be a viable alternative. The thing is just like first there's trip risk. It's relatively hard on the joints. And people feel self-conscious. So especially if you're not yet like an athlete, if you haven't reached your peak performance, do you feel comfortable in public to push to your limits? Many people, I suspect, don't. And so the Carol bike provides a personalized, optimal, most efficient cardio workout that you can perform from the comfort, from the privacy of your own home. And just makes it very, very convenient and very time efficient. So I do it every other morning. The bike is kind of between my bed and my bathroom. And so it takes
convenient.
Yes, it takes me about 6-7 minutes, and I get the same cardio benefits as an hour-long run. And that means I can do this and stick to it really in any circumstances. And that's really the key thing about exercise is, can you stick to it? Can you do it any day, any time? Will you not drop off? And can you just adhere to it? That's really the main thing about exercise.
Right. One or two workouts
absolutely.
is not going to improve your health. It is the long-term commitment. You said so many cool things here. Like, I love the safety, and that makes a lot of sense. The privacy, because I look like a lunatic when I do my Carol bike sprints, and I can't even explain it to someone. It's like, you just have to witness this in person. And the AI component, I think, is really what sets it apart, because again, I think there's a lot of skepticism. I was at first before I tried it. Why can't, like Renee said, why can't I just recreate this? Maybe the hill sprints, but there really is, you feel this generating force and increasing resistance as you go, that I don't know how I could possibly produce that on my own. But I'm very curious because when I look up reduced exertion high intensity, it says non-exhausting sprints. What I think is interesting is I am like totally gassed at the end of this sprint, but as soon as I click over into recovery, it's almost like it didn't happen. Can you explain kind of what's happening then? Like, how could we be working so hard, totally gassed, totally out of breath, and then the recovery, it's like I have more energy. When I do typical HIIT, I feel really exhausted after. That's the key difference that I feel.
Same. Yeah.
That's That's entirely right. And this is literally where it came from. So um, HIIT is a well-known high-intensity interval training, well-known concept. Many people will have heard of it. It's clearly very effective, so there's no questions around that. But a HIIT session is usually 20 to 30 minutes. You do 6, 7, 8 intervals that are like 40, 60, sometimes even like 2, 3 minutes, 4 minutes long. And while it's effective, the rate of perceived exertion is very high. So it feels very exhausting, feels very draining, and many people can't stick to it. And then what scientists did is systematically search for the minimum volume of sprint training that you have to perform to create a powerful training stimulus. And they found that 2 20-second sprints are the sweet spot in that you get a really powerful training stimulus in minimal time. So going much shorter than that, then you give up on the effectiveness. And doing more or longer sprints actually has been proven to not deliver further gains, further benefits. And in fact, it appears that it gives less benefits, which that is really quite remarkable.
Fascinating.
And yeah, that is really fascinating, because usually in exercise, more is better. Or like if you train more and if you train harder, you get more benefits. But with this particular sprint interval training, REHIT, it seems to be that if you do more or longer sprints, you not only get not more benefits, you get less benefits. And nobody has really a kind of rock solid explanation for it. But what is thought to be the case is that psychology kicks in and you pace yourself. So if you know that you have to do 6 sprints and they're all 30 seconds long, you pace yourself. You operate at like 90% or so, because you want to get through all 6 of them and so on. But what we want to achieve in REHIT is just 2 20-second sprints. And in those 20-second sprints, you really go all out, you push to your limits, and 2 times 20 seconds is short enough for me, for you, for everyone to be able to do that. So the first 10 seconds, they feel quite all right. Then 10 to 15, yes, gets harder. And then 15 to 20 is really quite hard. So it's not a free lunch. You have to momentarily work really hard, and your heart rate will shoot up and you will breathe heavily. But then, because the sprints are so short, the overall level of exertion is really very little. And that means you recover quickly, and you don't have like long muscle soreness or like long lasting that you feel drained or so. But really within 3 minutes, you come off the bike, and I can go on and just go about my day, then everything else I have to do. And we have many customers who have the bikes actually in their offices, and you can do it in your lunch break, in your coffee break, because you actually return back to normal quite quickly. And yes, as you said, like I find it's very invigorating, very energizing. And for me, it's a great way to start my day. And that is because the overall amount of exertion is actually very little, because the sprints are so short. And that is, something very special about this exercise. And Carol Bike makes it very simple to perform this type of exercise, because the bike does everything automatically for you. It tells you, it coaches you through the workout. And then really all you have to do is just push hard when the bike tells you. And that makes it something that, very many people are able to do.
Yeah. I mean, you're really solving a lot of problems for people. And I think, number one, and I've heard you say this, the number one reason people don't work out is lack of time. So you've solved that. Like there's just no excuse if you do this twice a week. But I think also I hear a lot from clients is after lack of time, I don't really know what to do. I go to the gym, I'm kind of like messing around. I don't really know what to do. So I love the coaching part of it. And you can even do like the voice, with the tiger chasing you, and it can really guide you through. So
that's the best. It's so ancestral. It's so motivating.
Yeah. And I think what's really fascinating too is that the impact on VO2 max.
Yeah,
And maybe you can share a little bit about that with our audience, because maybe some people aren't familiar with what VO2 max is and why that's really one of the key markers for longevity. So we're not just talking about like weight loss and cardiovascular health, but like if you want to live longer and healthier, VO2 max is essential.
absolutely. Yeah, not only essential, it is literally the most important health marker when it comes to longevity and reducing all-cause mortality. Um, and it's by some margin the most important health marker. So VO2 max is your ability to burn oxygen during exercise. And that is driven by your ability to deliver oxygen to your muscles. So that's your lung capacity, that's your peak flow and your cardiac peak flow. So how much blood can your heart pump? It's the vascular capillarization. How well are your blood vessels able to deliver oxygenated blood to your muscles? That's the whole oxygen delivery side. And then it's the oxygen consumption side, which is driven by your mitochondrial health, your mitochondrial function. So how large mitochondria do you have? How well do they function? Mitochondria are the powerhouses of your cell where you're basically burning oxygen. And so what the REHIT achieves is to send a very powerful all body signal to your body, to your muscles, to build more and larger mitochondria. And I can maybe very briefly explain how can such a short exercise create such a powerful stimulus. And I think the first thing people have to understand, you never get fitter during the workout. You always get fitter in the recovery between your workouts. So recovery is important, and the workout itself just has to create a stimulus. And with REHIT on the Carol bike, we achieve that by momentarily simulating an emergency situation. So a situation where you would have to fight for your life or run for your life. And so you have a momentary spike in energy demand where your legs need about 100 times more energy than they need during rest. And to satisfy that energy demand, your body has to tap into the fastest acting energy systems. And the first one is the phosphocreatine system. It's literally instant, but it lasts only for about 10 seconds. And then the next energy system is the glycogen system. Glycogen is a storage form of sugar stored in your muscles. And again, it's very, very fast to switch on. And because you have this severe spike in energy demand, your body gets ready for sustained effort. It doesn't know whether this is just a 20-second sprint or whether you now have to, like for the next 5 minutes, run for your life. And it mobilizes lots and lots of glycogen, about 25 to 30% of the glycogen that's stored in your thighs. That's a phenomenal amount. That's really the amount of energy that could sustain a much longer effort. And you actually burn through only very little of this. But that's also not important for the training stimulus. The stimulus gets created just by mobilizing the glycogen, because bound to the glycogen are very important molecules, AMP, that get released with the glycogen and then activated to AMPK. And though that activates further downstream PGC1 alpha, which is your body's master regulator for mitochondrial biogenesis. So with REHIT, you can activate this PGC1 alpha pathway in literally in seconds, and thereby send a very powerful signal to your body that it has to develop more and larger mitochondria. If you go for a long run, 45 to 60 minutes, you actually hit the same endpoint. So you also activate PGC1 alpha, but through a different pathway. There's called the calcium channel. It's not AMPK that activates it, but CAMK. And for that pathway, you need about 45 to 60 minutes of steady contractions of the muscle. So it's the same pathway, it's the same endpoint, but you need much more time to actually activate it. And that's a really clever, or like that's the hack of REHIT, that there's another path to trigger that training stimulus in seconds rather than hours. And that's what makes it just so efficient.
Cool.
And really, as far as I know, really, there's nothing that's as efficient in improving your VO2 max as REHIT is.
Wow. Okay.
Great biohack.
So yeah, amazing. I have so many questions. So I'm curious because this sounds like the best ancestral hack. We're just mimicking how our ancestors, were hunting for food, running for their lives, temporary fight or flight stress, and the body adapted then in the recovery. Because you mentioned we're reaching the same endpoint with endurance versus HIIT, could this replace endurance work?
So we try to never. So exercise is super positive. It's probably the most powerful prescription for longevity that you can think of. Therefore, I'm always hesitant to talk somehow badly about other types of workouts. And there's a place for longer workouts as well. Zone 2 training, for example, has gained a lot of tractions. There's some very popular figures that promote Zone 2 training very strongly. However, I feel if you prioritize what you do, especially given that time is such an important barrier for most people to do workouts and perform exercise, the first thing I would always stack into my workout, program would be these REHIT rides, because they give you an incredibly high ROI in terms of the time you invest and the improvement in VO2 max that you achieve. And it's very clear, every endurance athlete, there's no serious endurance athletes that doesn't also do high intensity or sprint interval training. That's just part of the repertoire of a serious endurance athlete. If you then have a lot more time, and this really doesn't take a lot. It takes, so you do that 3 times a week, and you can do it in 5 to 8 minutes per session. So what in total is like 15 to 25 minutes. And that delivers an incredible amount of benefit in terms of VO2 max improvement, strengthening your heart, strengthening your mitochondria, and so on. If you then have more time, you can add longer sessions. So for Zone 2 training, the recommendation is generally 60 to 90 minutes to improve specific aspects of mitochondrial function and mitochondrial health. So for example, with Zone 2 training, you can specifically improve further your capacity to metabolize fat as a fuel on a sustained basis, and therefore perform exercise and for longer time basically burn fat before you have to switch to glycogen, to sugar, essentially, to carbs that you burn during exercise. That has some advantages in competitions, has some health advantages to train that as well. But in terms of time investment you need for that is really, it comes later in the priority. So if you have, I work out maybe 5 hours each week, so quite a lot. But the way I stack that is I do about 20 minutes of carol for my cardio. and then I do about 3 hours weightlifting. Because first I enjoy that, and I do it with my son, and it's a really social thing. So it's something, the cardio aspect, I love because it makes me more capable and more like I'm more energized, and it's from a health and longevity perspective so important. Then the weightlifting, yeah, I love because I like to be strong, and it's a really social thing that I do with my son in the gym, and therefore it's actually, yeah, not such a big deal for me to invest time for that. There's further benefits that I get out of that. And then if I have more time, yes, then I occasionally do either a longer HIIT session or a longer zone 2 ride or so. But it's in terms of where it ranks in priority, it's clearly later.
That makes sense. Getting the priorities. And also, I think depending on what type of weight training you're doing, that could be considered zone 2 endurance training. You could kind of pile that into one, but like sitting on a stationary bike for 60 plus minutes sounds rather boring for most people. So it makes sense to get the HIIT in. And then if you do have extra time or can socialize, I love that you work out with your son. It's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the weightlifting, that's super important for longevity too, right? Dr. Gabrielle Lyon always says muscle is the organ of longevity. So I love that. You do the REHIT, you do the muscle or strength training. And then if you have time and want to do other activities, for me, just like walking or hiking, like movement, is a great thing.
Exactly. So there are, and so with REHIT on a carol bike, you tick a super important box very, very efficiently in minimal time. But yes, then obviously you also have to work on strength. Now, with REHIT, you actually do quite a lot in terms of strength training for your legs because the forces are so high, they're also relevant for strength. So we see with our users, they get a fantastic increase in VO2 max, but they also get a good improvement in terms of strength. But there's obviously more to the body than just your legs and your glutes. There's upper body, there's your back, and so on. And that's very important. And then the third pillar is and I could do that a little bit more, but I do some of it, is around mobility and stability. So that can be stretching, yoga, Pilates, those types of things. And you will have to, you should build like an entire program that covers those 3 pillars.
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, what else do you see with people with the Carol bike? So we see an increase in VO2 max, anything with heart rate variability, blood pressure, any other markers that are really game changers?
So there's a long list. There's a long list of because exercise is so important and so fundamental. And you hit basically many of those benefits that exercise delivers. The headline benefits for Carol bike is really VO2 max, so your cardiorespiratory fitness, and there, what the studies have shown is within a really short amount of time, 8 weeks, with as little as 20 minutes per week, you can get a 12% improvement of VO2 max. Now, to put that into context, that's like, as we age beyond the age of 30, we lose about 10% of VO2 max per decade. So in only 8 weeks, you can dial your cardiorespiratory fitness back by more than a decade. Or another thing that's kind of for like an average American, 12% improvement in VO2 max would result in 2 years additional healthy life expectancy. So very important in terms of longevity. And it doesn't stop there. So the most scientific studies are relatively short. That's kind of how those work. And they show consistently something like 12% in 8 weeks, then up to like around 20% in 20 weeks. And we see in our users that kind of over the first year, you can get 30, 40, 50% improvement in VO2 max. In fact, when I started, or since, and this is a few years back now, I increased my VO2 max by 50% within the first year. And I sit now comfortably in the, the highest performance band for my age group with very little cardio because it's so efficient. So that's one
amazing.
thing.
50%? Yeah. That's kind of insane.
Yes. I shall say, maybe I wasn't that good with my and struggled to get all my cardio done before I started. So really, Carol has been transformational, also kind of from a personal health perspective for me.
Yeah.
So that's VO2 max. That's one side of it. The other big headline benefit is metabolic health, and that is also, I mean, is remarkable. Scientific studies have shown that you can achieve a 62% risk reduction, and that was on average for a cohort in a trial. 62% risk reduction of developing metabolic diseases like type 2 diabetes. And that risk reduction is measured by something called the METS Z score. That's a clinical risk score based on a basket of, it's 5 markers, is lower blood pressure, increased good HDL cholesterol, reduced triglycerides, reduced waist circumference, and reduced blood sugar. And again, for that is so relevant for, I mean, literally the majority of Americans, because so many of us, of Americans are and here in the UK as well, just metabolically not healthy and are either pre-diabetic or at risk of developing diabetes at some point in their life. So there's such a remarkable risk reduction is really, just very powerful and makes it very, very worthwhile to spend this very short amount of time each week to keep yourself healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then there's a fairly long list of other benefits. So you get a meaningful amount of calorie burn, and thereby and also in terms of the metabolic flexibility, your insulin sensitivity and so on, it helps with weight management, no question. It improves if you do it, it can improve your circadian rhythm. Like I do it always first thing in the morning, ideally with sunlight exposure if the sun shines here.
Nice.
And it's good for your brain, it's good for your mental health. So there's really a long list that just reflects that exercise is such a powerful thing for your health and your well-being. And with Carol, you can get those benefits in a really, really short amount of time.
Yeah, I love that. And again, as Renee said, people don't do it because they don't have time. Also, they don't know what to do. And you have simplified both of those, just made it super easy. We know what to do. If anyone doesn't have time to do the Carol bike, like I'm not really sure what the advice is after that. Like anybody can find time to do this.
You spend more time on Instagram in a day probably than the Carol bike would take.
Yes. No, and but that's the problem, because I mean, amongst the sports science community, there is somewhat an argument whether we should try to make exercise shorter and more efficient, or whether we should try to make exercise somehow more fun or more enjoyable. And certainly there might be different approaches for different people. And the people who say, oh, no, this is not about time, they argue, well, we waste so much time on waste. Yeah, we spend so much time on Instagram, TikTok, Netflix, and so on. It's all just an excuse. People are really just lazy. And therefore, we should try to make exercise pleasurable, fun, engaging, and so on. And certainly that might be the right answer for a segment of the population. We take the view that companies like Meta, TikTok, Netflix, they are trillion-dollar companies because they're really, really good at competing for your time and kind of catching your attention. And so giving people the opportunity to cover that exercise component off in very, very little time, I think it's just accepting realities. Like we don't sleep as much. Like I think I've read some studies that we sleep about 2 hours less than we did 80 years ago, and sleep is, in principle, a pleasurable thing to do, and you have an immediate positive effect if you had a good night's sleep, and you have like immediate negative effect if you had a bad night's sleep. So the feedback loop is actually really short. And still, we sleep much less than we used to because we have all these distractions and because we have, highly successful companies that compete for that time. And yeah, they're worth that much because they're so good at it. And so we thought, okay, let's not try to be more fun and entertaining than Instagram, but let's try to be as short and as efficient as possible so that people can essentially scroll and get their workout in.
Yeah.
Maybe
That's
just
great.
in the recovery periods, but during that sprint, you
Yeah,
can't focus
exactly.
on anything else.
Exactly.
So I just wanted to share what I felt on the Carol bike. I've noticed, as I mentioned before, like that sprint is really hard, but then I get more energy after. And for my energy type, I know I really have to expend enough energy during the day. Otherwise, my sleep will not be deep and restful. I have to fatigue my body. But it's this sweet spot of fatiguing my body, but not overexerting, where then I get kind of brain foggy and don't have mental clarity. This has been the sweet spot for me where I can still get through a work day, because if I do traditional HIIT or just a really intense weight training session, I'll be kind of dragging through the day. I will have fatigued my body, but it's too much. And this is just the perfect balance where I can actually get deep sleep. And I know that's not for everybody, but for me, if I do not do enough activity, sleep goes down the drain so quickly.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that balance.
Yeah. And I'm same way.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh no, I just experienced the same thing. Even like Orange Theory Fitness. I go because it's a fun thing to do. I go with my husband. The music is good, but we only go 8 times a month, versus some people do it 5 times a week, which is crazy to me. But I can't do it in the morning though. It just totally kicks my butt, and then I'm dragging the whole day, which I don't know, makes you question, is it really a good workout if it makes you that tired?
Really?
Yeah, but I have to do it at night versus Carol bike. So, well, this is funny timing. I have one coming to my house probably tomorrow. So I'll get to report back on more regular use. But for now, since our parents have one, every time I go home, that's my workout. And it's great because when I'm home, it's really about family time, right? Spending as much time together as we can. Fortunately, we all like to work out together, so that's a fun thing. But I can do that, and then we can go out to dinner for the night, or like it's just so quick to just squeeze that in. It doesn't take away from our time together.
That's such a good point. Yeah, especially around the holidays coming up. It's like, how do we accomplish
Yeah.
that? Still get our recovery so we don't overexert, and more time to spend with loved ones. That's the best.
Yeah. Exactly, especially during those times, because during the holidays, many people will be very busy. You have like all sorts of occasions, and you're very busy with the preparations and this and that. So it's very easy to, drop your usual workout habits and routines. And kind of one, how should I say, sad thing about exercise is, while it's so powerful and beneficial, and you can achieve a lot in a fairly limited amount of time. Like in a few weeks, you can get some remarkable improvements. If you don't stick to it, the detraining effect is just as fast as the training effect. So you can get a great improvement in VO2 max if you start to work out, you see the benefits, you feel the benefits, everything perfect. But if you don't stick to it, you lose them just as fast as you've gained them. So you really have to find a routine, find a workout that you can stick to whatever life throws at you. And so for me, that is REHIT on a Carol bike. I know, like, however busy I am and whatever my other priorities are, I can do that. Kind of one problem is obviously when I have to travel and I don't have it in a hotel, then that's then I lose out on that. But as long as I'm at home in the office, and I have access to my Carol bike, I can stick to it whatever happens, and that's really helpful.
Yeah,
even more so because you can't get to the bathroom without seeing it. It's like that would get me
in your face, in your face.
Yes,
so
exactly.
I think we need Carol bikes in like airports and hotels.
Oh, that would be the best. Can you work on that, please?
Is that coming?
Yes. Obviously, our plan is to conquer the world. Absolutely.
Yes.
So we
okay.
And our mission is very much so. We're mission driven. We want to make a real dent. We want to shift the needle on the inactivity epidemic, because I mean, it's shocking. Despite exercise being so important, 95% of Americans do not reach the recommended levels of exercise. And so it's only 5% that do. So if those who are listening struggle,
really,
yes, yeah, absolutely. And the number one barrier, if you survey people, is lack of time. So it is something many people struggle with, and our mission is to give our users, to give our customers a tool that they can overcome that barrier, and that they can stick to it, and then on a continuous basis have a long-term sustainable routine to improve their VO2 max, to keep their VO2 max at optimal levels, and therefore get all these health and fitness and longevity benefits.
Yeah, that's wild.
I'm actually really shocked that it's 5% versus 95%, because so I started my career in the fitness industry. So I've seen the dark side of the fitness addicts, people, teaching group fitness, people that do way too much cardio. And I think, there's always reason people do it because it's social, because it feels good for their mood and their mental health. But when you talk about improvements in VO2 max and how important recovery is, I do think that there's a true dark side to doing too much. I know you already shared the benefits to doing less and doing more efficient work. Is there anything you can share for those people that are like, I have to do my long workout because it gives me a runner's high and it improves my mood and I got to sweat. Like, I really need that. What are potentially the detriments there?
So again, I think exercise is something positive, and so I don't want to talk anybody out of their long runs. That's if it's good for you, it's good for you. Stick to it. If you found a routine that works for you, congratulations. That's so valuable. So do it. On the other hand, kind of really long and exhausting endurance runs, can have some downside. So if you stress your body too much, and you increase cortisol levels, for example, that can have like cortisol generally as a stress hormone has many downsides, but can also have a catabolic effect and make it harder to build and maintain muscle, which we've said already is also like one of the very key ingredients. And so for some people who kind of are already in a position where building muscle is more difficult. So I'm 47 now. I love lifting weights, and I think I'm reasonably good at it. But if I see how fast my son progresses versus how hard I have to work to hold still, I really don't want to do exercises that would have like a catabolic effect, and that would rather work against me maintaining my muscle mass. And the same is true for for women if they enter perimenopause. Again, it's harder to build and maintain muscle. So long endurance workouts may not be kind of the first choice really for that group. And then having something really short, like these highly efficient REHIT workouts to get the cardiorespiratory benefits, and then just have more time for strength training, is actually, in my view, in our view, and I know there are many others who think the same, a really powerful prescription for that group. So basically anybody who has some, already, be it their age, and that's largely it, kind of disadvantage at building and maintaining muscle, this is probably the better choice than very long endurance exercises.
Okay. Don't sacrifice strength training, and consider your individual biochemistry.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I have one more question, and I'm personally very curious about this. Fasted or non-fasted for a Carol bike workout because of the impact on glucose and glycogen? Yeah. What are your thoughts?
I can give you my thoughts. I can't give you a scientific study for that. So I have to say, like, usually we want to really, everything we that's the inclusion criteria for us. If we put something onto the Carol Bike app, if there are new workouts and so on, we want there to be good scientific evidence for it. And it has to be effective, has to be efficient, and backed up by scientific studies. For fasted versus non-fasted, there is no such study. So hence, I'm just talking anecdotes here.
Yeah.
And what my preferences are. I like to do it first thing in the morning, every other day, and I do it in a fasted state. And I find that that feels best and is my preference very clearly. And I find even that it suppresses. I don't do all the time time restricted eating or intermittent fasting. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. But that there is an element of suppressing my appetite. Yeah. And if I do a Carol right, that I actually go longer without eating than if I don't. Now, whether that's the same for everybody, I don't know. But so my preference is fasted. Others may be different. There, I would just say you try it. You try it a few different ways and you find what works best for you.
Okay. Okay.
Well,
yeah, I'm going to do an experiment.
Yeah, definitely. You get feedback on your power, which I think, if you see that your power drops fasted, maybe it increases not, or maybe it's the opposite. I think like you get that data to report back to you what's working for you.
Of metrics. And so absolutely you can experiment and do these n=1 experiments. On the other hand, just whatever feels best there, I would say is just such a good guide. And like everything else, the bike optimizes for you. And then, fasted, non-fasted, that's just preference.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
All right. Stay tuned. I will do an experiment. I've definitely never done it fasted. So I'll experiment with that. And then also I actually have another CGM. I'll maybe put it on in a week or so and see what happens with glucose too.
Oh, yeah. So, cool.
Good. All right.
Love it. We have work to do. I think I've only done it fasted, but I feel good that way. I don't know that I would be motivated to try the other, but yeah, maybe curious to see if my power changes, power output. So, Ulrich, thank you so much for sharing about the Carol Bike. One, can you tell us what Carol stands for and anything else that our audience needs to know about how to find Carol, where to find you? Please share.
Yes. So Carol stands for Cardiovascular Optimization Logic. And we thought of it as the AI that personalizes and optimizes the workout for each user. So Carol being your AI health coach, and we will build it out further. Maybe there will be one day a fully fleshed out persona, like an AI health coach that just supports you in getting to optimal cardio fitness. That's where the name came from. This is because we're a little bit older, and that was a time when AI models were called like HAL or Wiki or so, and not ChatGPT. But that's the origin of that. You can find us on all the socials at the Carol Bike. That's one way. The other is our website and web store, carolbike.com. I should also say if anyone in your audience wants to purchase a bike, so we sell exclusively through our web store. There's 0% financing, there's free delivery. And one thing that's, I think, quite special is we offer, we call it a 100-day risk-free trial. So if you purchase a bike, you have 100 days to see whether you like it, whether you can stick to it, and whether you see the benefits. And 100 days that's enough time to answer all those 3 questions. We're very confident that yes, you'll like it and you'll see the benefits. If it's for any reason not for you, then you can just call us and we pick up the bike for full refund. So therefore, it just takes some of the risk away to make a purchase like that.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great. So 100 days. That's incredible.
That's easily enough. So most of the scientific studies are 8 to 10 weeks. So was that 56 to 70 days? So you'll have more than enough to do your own trial.
Great.
Yeah. Perfect.
All right.
Prove it to yourself.
Yeah.
That's
Exactly
awesome.
that.
And one thing we didn't even
Okay.
mention, like we barely sweat on this thing. So again, like if you want to drop this into your day and not have it disrupt your hair, your makeup, your clothing,
Exactly.
like this is so
Yes.
easy.
Oh
Yes.
yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Very cool.
All right. And we'll link to all of that in the show notes so it's easy for everyone to find. All right, Ulrich, one final question for you. Can you leave our audience with a piece of advice, something they should start doing today to optimize their health?
Go to bed early. So we've spoken now so much about exercise, and I think exercise may be the most important thing you can do for your health and for your longevity. The other two really large things is obviously sleep and nutrition. Personally, sleep is not the easiest for me, so I'm better on the exercise dimension, but I totally understand how important it is. And so one thing you can do today is go to bed early, and then also makes exercise tomorrow easier, and you'll have more willpower for that. So yeah, that's the one piece of good advice.
Excellent.
Very good advice.
We fully agree. Awesome. Well, thank you, Ulrich. This has been such a pleasure. Long time coming. Thank you so much for chatting with us today. Great to see you, and we'll see you soon at A4M. And for anyone else listening that's there, please come and say hi. But thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a pleasure. Thank you.
And thanks to everyone that tuned in. We will see you next time.